Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to Claire for the wonderful introduction. Sorry. It has been such a huge privilege to be involved in this project for the last year, and it's been really very, very special to me. So I hope you're all as excited to hear the array of wonderful speakers we've got here today as I am. So I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of the research, which will hopefully set the scene for the rest of the day. So I'm going to just take you through who the partners were, what the research question is and was, the approach that I took, the journey I took also, and how we are where we are today. So the partners of the research were the British Ceramics Biennial, as Claire's explained, High Speed Rail, and myself, Claire Baily. And in this context, I was called a clay researcher. So as you will all know, HS2 is Britain's new high-speed railway and biggest infrastructure project. So it involves building major structures, including tunnels, embankments, cuttings, bridges, and viaducts. And this project in particular forms part of HS2's Create with Waste initiative, which was set up by Louise Trodden as part of the Arts and Culture team. So its aim was to reuse the waste generated by HS2 and support local circular economies. So to date, this programme has fostered a cluster of really quite amazing creative projects along the railway route with waste materials from both the London and the Birmingham flagship stations. And I will be doing a more detailed paper about those projects specifically, which I would really recommend everyone take a look at. But this particular project focuses on the reuse of London clay that originated from the excavation of the station box at Old Oak Common site in London. So this was a huge feat of engineering. It's where all the trains will stop, and it took over 3 years to excavate. So with that excavation, there was 1.3 million tonnes of London clay removed, which is enough to fill over 300 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So we're talking a really vast amount of material. So this clay was removed from site by a conveyor belt, which was constructed very specifically to reduce the lorry movements on the local roads. It was sent to a logistics hub where it was transported by rail to several reuse sites, but a large proportion was also sent to landfill. As Claire explained, the British Ceramics Biennial, known as BCB, is an arts organisation based here in Stoke-on-Trent with a vision of making change through clay. It is so since 2023, BCB has had this relationship with HS2, and in total it has received 13 tonnes of waste London clay from Old Oak Common. And it has explored the materials possibility for reuse through 2 projects, both of which have utilised the clay in an unfired form, which is a really important point. So these are some images of Tactile in 2023. So here the clay was used as part of a growing medium to create a tiled wildflower meadow, which can be seen on the University of Staffordshire campus and is really very, very beautiful. And Playscape, which is on display at this year's biennial, which the lead artist, Sarah Fraser, will talk about later on. And this uses the ancient technique of rammed earth to transform this waste into a joyful, creative, and really fun public space. So the third partner is myself. So outside of this role, I'm an artist, I'm a researcher and an educator. And my work in the last few years has very much explored the intersections of art, sustainability, and material innovation. So I've really been focusing on what it means to explore materiality and creative practice, and looking at how our material practice might be reshaped in the context of the climate emergency. So my background is in sculpture. I've been working as a sculpture tutor at Goldsmiths College in London for over a decade now, and I'm an active member of the Centre of Art Ecology, which contributes to the broader conversations about the role of art in ecological resistance. I'm currently doing a practice-based PhD at the University of Gloucestershire, And this year I'm part of Artangel's Making Time programme for 2025, which supports artists to embed environmental consciousness into their practice. And these images are nothing to do with today, but they're really just to show you some of the recent material research I've been undertaking, which has been utilising the byproducts of rapeseed oil production alongside homegrown flax fibres and a binder which I've been developing from potato starch. So back to the research. So this project is 19 months in total, which will take us to the end of this year. And the question I was set was quite specific and also quite wide. So what are the opportunities and challenges for creative and industrial use of clay extracted as a result of UK and HS2 construction activity? And what are the potential implications of using construction spoil clay to reduce the environmental impact of virgin clay extraction and its related processes? So this research, I felt, really situates spoil clay within urgent conversations about the importance of material reuse in the face of the ecological crisis. And I was asked to explore the current and potential uses of spoil clay by artists, creative organisations and industry across the UK. So that work really traversed quite a range of scales. And the key outputs of the research include this conference today, and a published research document, of which I think there will be 2, which will be available hopefully on the BCB website at the beginning of next year. So the approach I took was to take the work in 4 stages. So very much to understand the context to start with. I'm not a ceramicist, I'm very much a material generalist. So to understand the context of BCB, HS2, Stoke itself, and the role of clay generally, then to connect with experts and to learn what I could. As I said, I'm not an expert in this field, so I was really, really humbled by the generosity that came from all around me to teach me things. And then I've gone into a stage of developing those ideas by myself and in collaboration with other people. And then a really key part of this work is to also share that knowledge and share those insights. And hopefully that work will get taken forward in some way. So at this point, the project is very much still active. And this event forms part of the development and sharing stages. So just to root us for the rest of the day, what is construction spoil clay and why is this topic important? So the term construction spoil clay really refers to the surplus clay material that is a byproduct of digging and excavation on construction sites. So in reality, this material is often unwanted and undervalued, and it is alarmingly common practice for this material to be classified as a waste, removed and sent to landfill. And why is this important? Well, construction activity in the UK excavates thousands of tonnes of clay each year. So construction, demolition and excavation waste itself generates a staggering 61% of total UK waste, 28% of which comes from soil itself. So in 2020, this amounted to 53 billion tonnes of soil waste, contributing 50% of the total tonnage received by landfill sites. So it's pretty staggering numbers. And just to be clear, in this context, I'm talking about clay as a component of subsoil, which John will take us through fantastically later, rather than a mineral which arises from, say, mining or quarrying. So clays themselves are fine-grained sedimentary rocks that result from the weathering and alteration of older rocks through chemical, mechanical and hydrothermal processes. Clay deposits can take anything from thousands of years to tens of millions of years to form. So therefore, very importantly, the renewal of clay cannot be planned within the human life cycle. So the London Clay Formation, with which we're looking at specifically, is a widespread geological deposit in the southeast of England, which was formed 56 to 49 million years ago. So with that in mind, why on earth would we disregard a material that is both the product of deep geological time and the foundation of human civilization. So a key concept to this research, which Caroline will talk to us more about later, is the idea of the circular economy. Now, I'm sure everyone knows, but since the Industrial Revolution, we've mainly operated in a linear framework, which is very much characterized by the take, make, use, and dispose model. So it became dominant as production expanded to meet the growing demand for rapid population growth. But however, this model has really contributed to over-extraction of natural resources, large-scale environmental damage, escalating waste and pollution, and a growing pressure on ecosystems that can simply no longer regenerate at the pace of human consumption. So this is no longer sustainable, and despite what people might say, a shift to the circular economy is not only necessary, but it's truly urgent. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation identifies the 3 core principles of circularity as eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials, importantly at their highest value, and also regenerating nature. So these principles led me to ask, what opportunities for reuse already exist? What new practices might be developed to align industry with the circular economy? And what if we saw the climate crisis as an opportunity and a lever for innovation? A lot of the reluctance to do what the climate crisis requires of us comes from the assumption that it mostly means giving things up. But what if it means giving up things that we're well rid of and don't need anyway, and freeing ourselves from the very things that are destroying us? So, moving into the connect and learn phase, I set out to gather knowledge wherever I could, engaging with experts, visiting factories, which I absolutely adored, and amazing processing facilities, a lot of which are embedded in the heritage here of Stoke-on-Trent. And I really immersed myself in the research. So it was a process that filled me with a vast amount of excitement, but admittedly a huge amount of confusion. And it very soon became a much bigger beast than I had expected, with a huge breadth and complexity that, like I say, I just had not anticipated. So I began to map the journey, which is a little skew-whiff on the screen today. And this is what I found. I'm not going to go into it in too much depth, but it's a complicated web of interconnected strands where each action seemed to ripple outwards. This issue is undeniably complex, with no single solution or clear resolution. And it really needs all of us to come together as a community of practice, which hopefully we can start here today, to ask new questions and debate the answers. So really an action shaped by vision. What really became clear as well is that human behaviour and the way that we think and act and our willingness to adapt and accept change is just as important in navigating these issues as any industrial system or manufacturing process. So I've identified 8 important pillars of the research around which I've shaped today's programme. So they're all interconnected and encompassed within a framework of what I've called culture. And this refers to people's behaviours and mindsets. So each of these 8 pillars today will be represented by an expert or a practitioner, all of which I believe are really using the power of imagination to push the boundaries of conventional practice, showing us that other ways are possible and inspiring us all to do more, and quite frankly, to do it better. So often the topics around climate crisis are quite heavy and full of negativity, and I've had a lot of emphasis in my voice there on very negative aspects. But today, in this creative and free-thinking space, I'd really like us to shift towards an optimism and an excitement even, and a hopefulness, because this is really very much a celebration of some amazing innovative thinking and practice that is happening here in the UK. So to start with, we're going to have the fantastic Caroline to talk to us about circular practice. So we're going to start away from clay in the world of materiality and material practice in general. She's going to talk to us about ideas of circularity and exploring our human relationship to materiality more widely. And really importantly, her work and the work of Franklin Till really look at the work of storytelling and narrative to inspire and engage people to become more connected to the world around them. We're then going to have John, who's going to talk to us very much about the value of soil. So why should we treat it and respect it with care? And I think he will also touch on what a devastation it is that this material could ever go to landfill in the first place. And he's also doing some really fantastic work to influence policy, which is where we really need the shifts to happen. So we're going to hear more about that from John. And through the day, we're really going to be traversing different scales. So we're going to be starting off with quite a local scale. And by the end of the day, we'll really be looking at a sort of global context. And I think the importance to emphasize there is that we need action at all of these different levels. So we need it locally, we need it regionally, nationally, and globally. And these are some examples of some fantastic local reuse schemes and networks that are happening that I feel is really important to raise the awareness of. The design field and the arts field is then going to be represented by Babak. He's going to talk about an amazing project called Sweet Terrain, which is on display at the Biennial. For me, I think this is a really, really rich project, which shows the importance of the role of artists and designers to use their imagination and work to really tell new stories about materials and the people, place, and culture with which that material is related. We're then going to keep getting larger and move to the built environment. So in this space, there are so many amazing people working hard to change the attitudes from within the construction industry itself. And these people have been very pivotal to me even before the research began. And they're really, really fantastic case studies of some really inspiring work that is happening. They pretty much all utilize clay and site waste materials in unfired forms, and preferably on site or as local to that site as possible. And they're going to talk to us about the lived experience of the opportunities and challenges within the industry itself. We'll then move on to innovation, where we'll have Apostolos and Ken. So there's some fantastic material developments going on in the cement industry to calcine waste clay, to use it eventually as a replacement cement, which could have quite huge ramifications. And then Ken has come all the way from Belgium to talk to us about his work with BC Materials, which is an organisation that takes excavation and agricultural waste from its local region in Belgium, turning it into building products for retail. And I think for us here in the UK that are kind of stuck at a lot of milestones at the moment, this is a really important model for us to look to. So hopefully you've all got an agenda for the day in your welcome brochure. It's very much in the spirit of learning and sharing today. So we're a really diverse room with much to learn from each other. So please be open-minded, be curious, talk to your neighbour and find out more about them. I'm really here to raise awareness to you, and hopefully you can take something from today with you and raise awareness wherever you go. So I'd like to finish with just two quick quotes, which are kind of cheesy, but I also totally love them. And they're from writers who can really say my sentiments much better than I can. So the first one is from Rebecca Solnit, who says that the rescuers we need are mostly not individuals, they are collectives, movements, coalitions, campaigns, civil society. Even the world's greatest conductor needs an orchestra. And one person cannot do much, but a movement can really topple a regime. And the last one is from Audre Lorde, who says, to refuse to participate in the shaping of our future is to give up. Do not be misled into passivity, either by false security, they don't mean me, or by despair, there's nothing we can do. Each of us must find our work, and we must do it. Thank you for listening.